Big boxing matches aren't always just about who's the toughest. Sometimes, the fight that gets chosen comes down to money. This might be the case with Canelo Alvarez, the super middleweight champion, and Chris Eubank Jr., a rising star. They're both great fighters, but is this a clash of titans or a fight for Chris's bank account? Let's dig deeper into the business side of boxing to see if this is a real showdown or just a fight for the money. Talk about an abundance of opponents. Ben Shalom, Chris Eubank Jr.'s promoter, says that whether Chris takes the fight against Canelo Alvarez next comes down to whether the match makes financial sense to Chris. Chris, the 34-year-old boxer, has a bunch of fights he could take according to his promoter, Ben Shalom. Shalom didn't say exactly who Chris could fight next, but some people think he might be talking about Conor Benn. Even though Chris could fight Conor Benn next, there's a hindrance. Conor doesn't have permission to box in the UK right now. So, if they do fight, it would have to be somewhere else, maybe even Saudi Arabia. Nobody knows for sure yet. Another option for Chris is a fight against Kell Brook, a 38-year-old boxer. Honestly, it wouldn't be the most exciting fight, but it might sell a lot of tickets in the UK since they're both British boxers. It would be kind of like Chris facing someone who's not quite at his level, similar to some of his recent fights. Okay, so here's the financial decision that Chris has to make when choosing his next fight. The fight against Canelo Alvarez is the big one. Canelo is a superstar boxer, and fighting him would be a huge opportunity for Chris. Canelo's fight events are characterized by a lot of marketing hype, and tons of people love watching him fight. This means his fights make a ton of money from people watching on pay-per-view, buying tickets to see him live, and companies sponsoring him. Basically, any boxer who gets to fight Canelo is in for a big payday. The good thing about choosing this fight is that Chris is one of the two names Canelo is considering for his next defense of his undisputed super middleweight championship in September, and that would be a massive fight in the US and the UK on PPV if it goes down. This could mean more money for Chris, but the money Canelo is willing to pay has to be enough for Chris. Otherwise, this could cancel the whole fight. When asked whether Chris Eubank Jr. will fight Canelo Alvarez next in September, Ben Shalom said to Boxing Scene, "As usual, it comes down to money," Shalom explained regarding the Canelo negotiations. Chris has a certain expectation for a fight like that. He's earned a huge amount during his career, and he's got other big fights being offered to him, but it's definitely a fight that he wants. Negotiations are ongoing, but it all comes down to whether it makes financial sense for him. Whether it is an effort to get as much attention as possible to increase the chances of the fight happening, Chris, too, seems to be pretty confident in his possible victory over Canelo. When speaking about the possible Canelo fight with BBC Sport after inking his new deal with Boxer, Chris said, "It's a fight I think I could win." The fans want to see Canelo in with guys who are going to press him, who are not going to back down, who are not going to shy away and crumble under the pressure. The fight fans know that's the type of fighter I am. Let's consider the kind of hype these words might create all over social media. Not forgetting that Canelo is a super famous boxer who fights for a lot of money and has fans all over the world. Fighting a guy like Chris would be a good way to expand his fan base and for Canelo to get even more popular in the UK, which means more people paying to watch the fight on TV and more companies wanting to sponsor him. Plus, winning against Chris would add another championship belt to his collection. For Chris, fighting Canelo is a huge chance to become more famous himself. He could make a ton of money from the fight, get deals to promote products, and become so well known that he could fight for even more money in the future. Although his skills and energy have visibly deteriorated from his best years from 2015 to 2019, he's got to get the big fights while he still can. A fight with Canelo might just be what he is looking for to retire in glory, after missing out on a chance to fight with another legend, Terrence Crawford, because the Nebraska native is targeting the big fish, Canelo Alvarez, after his title challenge next month against WBA junior middleweight champion Israel Madrimov on August 3rd in Los Angeles. Crawford isn't going to waste time going after an aging minnow. On the other hand, the fight with Conor Benn would be a more balanced fight, but there's a catch. Conor doesn't currently have a boxing license in the UK, so they'd have to fight somewhere else. Regardless of the venue, however, the fight might not spark fans' interest in the UK or worldwide. Ben has looked terrible in his 2 fights since he got into trouble after suspension. Despite being still young at 27, Ben doesn't look like the same fighter he once was, and there's not nearly the same buzz about his fights as there was in the past. So if it's all about the money, Chris would definitely make less money out of this fight. The fight with Kell Brook, however, is the least exciting option. Kell is a good boxer, but not quite at Chris's level. It would be a bit of a mismatch, but it might sell well in the UK because they're both British. Basically, Chris needs to decide if he wants to hold out for the big payday with Canelo or take a more realistic fight with Ben outside the UK or Brook. Whichever opponent he chooses, regardless of whether he is doing it for the money or the sake of his legacy before retiring, he has to choose an opponent he can take since there's not much left of Chris's skills, since he looked like an old guy getting knocked out by Liam Smith in the 4th round last year in January 2023. These fight opportunities are a good thing for Chris, considering that at 34, he must take advantage of the little time he has left in his career because he's nearing the end and take up more prominent fighters to add them to his portfolio. Shalom, speaking to Boxing Scene, said, "I think he knows it's now or never to fight a lot of the names that have been talked about throughout his career. He also wants world titles. It's good to get someone at that stage of their career, with their name built, ready for the big fights. He's a realist, and he knows that the next 18 months to 2 years are where all his big fights need to happen." Shalom continued and added that the Chris and Canelo fight may be a good fight for Canelo, since Chris is famous in the UK, and whenever he fights, he makes money. Shalom continued to say that despite him seeing the opportunity for both fighters, he has no power to convince them to take the fight since he is just a promoter, and all he can do is present the idea and let the fighter decide if it favors them financially. He said, "I think anyone that fights Canelo knows that, whether that's David Benavidez or anyone else that's been talked about," Shalom said. "But I think for Chris, he's such a big name in the UK. Every time he fights, he generates interest and money. As a promoter, all you can do sometimes is get the deal on the table and present it. Ultimately, it comes down to the fighter and whether financially it works for him." When asked what are the chances of the Canelo-Chris fight happening in September, Shalom said that it all depends on the terms of the contract regarding the money Chris will get. He acknowledges that someone like Canelo gets a lot of money per fight due to his fame, but emphasizes the fact that Chris knows his worth and he only wishes to get what he deserves, especially in a fight with someone like Canelo since he already has other options to explore. He said, "I'd say 50-50. Like I say, he has a lot of options, and if I'm honest, it's not down to the Canelo side, it's more Chris, and rightfully so. There's a certain amount he's used to earning, and he wants to get what he deserves from a fight against someone like Canelo. It is clear that an agreement has been reached. It's understood that the bout will take place in Vegas and not the UK, as has been rumored." Shalom revealed that they had talked about staging the fight in the UK. He revealed that the difficulty they had with that was with the AJ versus Daniel Dubois card on September 21st. He said that it was hard to envision another stadium card a week on either side of that. That had been the main barrier. Shalom thinks Canelo knows that if he's to box in the UK, which he is attracted to for the sake of his legacy, then Chris is the only opponent who could generate the sort of numbers that he'd want and the spectacle he'd want. The debate on whether to hold the fight in the USA or the UK is ongoing and being talked about, but Shalom confirmed that the initial offer has all been around Las Vegas in September. Do you think Chris will get that fight with Canelo or the other fighters? And if he does, do you think he stands a chance despite his age? Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates. See you in the next one.